Hey everybody, it's Nick with Comic Experience Sci-Fi. I'm at Fantastic Con 2025 here in Waterford, Michigan, and I am with Marta Kristen, the legendary actress from Lost in Space. And Marta, how you doing today?
I am doing well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So, let's talk about your early life a little bit. Now, you were adopted at the age of 5, is that correct?
That's
And
correct.
and we're in Michigan here, and you were adopted by a Michigan couple.
That's right.
And your father was a professor at Wayne State University, and your mother was a teacher.
Yes.
So, my first question, were you an only child, by the way?
No, I had a brother who was adopted before me.
Okay.
He was 8 years old when he was adopted,
Okay.
and I ascended into the family and to his life, and it was I. I have to tell you that being raised in Michigan. We had 5 acres. I was a tomboy. I played baseball. I climbed trees. I mean, I loved being outside. Spent probably most of my time outside, but I had just this wonderful experience of being a part of nature, and my parents were just so great. They were just so um, well. They were older. They were in their 50s when I was adopted, and I was older, so it was quite extraordinary to be raised in the Midwest.
Yeah, what city were you raised in? It was
Farmington.
Farmington Hills, okay, or Farmington proper.
Farmington proper.
Yeah, you don't want to mix those up. So,
Farmington Hills sounds a little fancy.
right. And now was it true that was it your dad who was actually too old to adopt an American child, so they were looking in Europe to adopt a child?
That's right. And they were good friends with the editor of the Detroit News. And there had been an article about a boy who had been adopted from the same orphanage. And he mentioned it to my parents that maybe they might want to reach out. And I was 3 years old when that happened. My mother worked for 2 years to get me to the United States. And every day she said she did something.
Had they met you before that process started?
No.
So it was sight unseen.
Sight unseen. Sight unseen.
Well, I think they got pretty lucky.
Oh, thank you. I was the one who got lucky. My mother said that when I got off the airplane, I walked towards them. See, I thought the flight attendant was going to be my mother. So it's very much surprised me when I found out that no, she sort of put me on the ground and my parents were waiting for me. And my mother said I walked like Charlie Chaplin from the Tramp towards them. Yeah, I maybe just to try and win them over, or I was an actor then. I'm an actor now. So
And you spoke no English.
I spoke no English.
How long did it take you to pick up English?
I did it pretty quickly because my adopted father, who spoke Swedish, I would say, no, don't talk dum Norwegian to me, because it was a little different. But what I realized later, in my later years, was that an actor translates a part that a writer has written, and that's essentially what I was doing. I was constantly translating and reading people. So what are they saying exactly? What do they mean? And so that's what I've done ever since.
Okay, when did your interest in performing become something that you really wanted to actually do for an audience?
I started community theater here in Bloomfield Hills.
Right.
And I knew that that was it. When I got in front of an audience, when I got on that stage, I felt like I was absolutely blossoming into, into the person that I knew that I was playing a character, and I knew that I understood it. I knew that I could be that person on stage, and it was a way of also sort of working out my own issues.
Okay.
And feelings, that I was allowed to feel certain things that I always felt in my non-acting, non-stage life. I could be, and instead of acting out in real life, I acted out on the stage.
Okay. How did having academic parents did having academic parents nurture that interest?
Oh, absolutely. They enriched my life. They knew exactly. I mean, I think right away they knew that, oh, here was someone who loves performing and because I love to sing, I love to dance. They put me in a tap dance class, and I have a picture. I had a picture of me uh, dancing supposedly with the rest of the girls, but I'm doing my own thing, and they're all lockstep, and I'm like, hello, hello, and that's always been. I've always been a little different from everyone, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I've worked because I bring something more of myself to pieces to acting.
Okay. So then your dad took a sabbatical and you guys went to California. And when his sabbatical was over, you wanted to stay and get into show business. Is that correct?
Well, my parents both were teachers, and they both took a sabbatical. My mother taught fourth grade here at Farmington Elementary, and my dad taught at Wayne State, taught philosophy there. And well, what happened was that James Harris, the producer of Lolita, came up to me in a restaurant, and he said, "Are you interested in acting?" And I looked up, and I said, "Oh, I've never been interested in anything else." And he said, "Well, I'm producing a movie called Lolita." And I said, "Oh, and I,
Hey, with that.
no, no, I was not. But he said, "Well, I'd love to meet your parents, but would like to have them read the book first, and you as well." My parents said, "No," and they were looking out for me. But but what happened was from that experience, James Harris, this producer of Lolita, said, "Well, I see potential in her. Would you mind if I got her an agent?" To my parents, my mother was said, "Well, that's all she's ever wanted to do, and of course,
Yeah.
let's try this." And I was signed up with an extraordinary agent. I mean, it was he was the agent for Elizabeth Taylor, so it was a really important agency, and so I started working right away, and I did all the shows, almost all the shows on television.
Likes, right.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I looked at the resume. Yeah, Leave It to Beaver. And of course, now tell us about how Lost in Space came about. And I read that Irwin Allen really wanted you, but you didn't at the time. You didn't really want to get stuck in one part. So for an actor, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You don't want to necessarily get stuck in one part, but at the same time, it's guaranteed work. So how did you make the decision to go ahead and take the role of Judy?
Well, Irwin called me every day for 2 weeks. And I married very young, a psychologist, and who was a bit older than I, and he was upset that I didn't want to do it. But my idea was that I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to be on Broadway. I had been in theater all my life, or a good majority of my life, even as young as I was, and that was sort of where my heart was. But people were telling me, "Are you kidding? This is every actor's dream." And so I began to think about it. But I did tell Irwin, there's a lot of people on this show. I don't want to be just lined up with the rest of them. And he said, "Absolutely not. We have all kinds of story themes for you that we've written, and you're going to be partnered with Major West, and there's all different kinds of stories that we have, for the two of you to get together, and there'll be that side story." And I began to think about it and thought, "Well, I can make something of this." And I had always been very independent and strong, and I thought, well, I can bring that to the role of Judy Robinson, even though I wasn't a scientist. I'd been a person who had wanted to be on Broadway, and so it became my goal was to make her someone who had this great inner strength to have gone out into space and to have and to be able to create a life and a fam and be a part of a family that in an adventure children's adventure series.
What at that point, as you were learning your craft of acting, could you share with us? Were there some lessons about acting or advice about the craft of acting that you would like to share or that really affected you?
I think that well, Jonathan, there was some rules that as an actor you when you go on set or on stage, um, you must understand. Number one, it's all a community. There are no prima donnas. No one is more important than the other. And I saw that Jonathan, who played Dr. Harris, Dr. Smith, Jonathan Harris, he honored everyone on this set. He knew their names, he knew their wives, he knew their children, he knew their birthdays, and he never went off set. And that was my lesson. I said, I tell young actors, if you're working, even if you're working in theater, you stay and watch the director directing the other actors, because you learn from you learn not only what they do but what they don't do. And for me, there's a friend of mine who lost his daughter very young. Um, when she was young, mentioned that she had a brother and sister who went off to college, and when he came home, his daughter, this young daughter who he eventually lost, gave him a wink, and the wink was, "Now it's just you and me, Dad," and Mom, of course, but and every actor has to find in a scene or as a part that wink that will tell the story of who they are, and a good writer will give you that. And so I started a theater company called West Coast Ensemble with four others, and we were voted the best small theater company by NPR in Los Angeles, for Los Angeles community. And and we would have writers, we would have contests for writers to come and present their material, and the best one would win the contest, and we would do their small one act plays. But it was always the wink that I was looking for, who that the reveal. And of course, as I was saying earlier, as an actor, we have to translate what the writer is trying to tell us, and we're looking in and we're actors are people who we are a studier of human behavior and how we all interact, and what we get from those relationships that we watch, and the people that we watch. And I think everyone should do improvisation. I do improv, and I've done it with the founder of the Groundlings in Los Angeles. I did it for years. He passed away not that long ago, but I found character. I even found a fighter. Hey, I'm gonna go out there. So Mom, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get them. I'm gonna get them. It's thrilling to find people who you have observed, and then bring that to life, and that's what actors do.
That's right. It's so interesting. Now in season one of Lost in Space, which is so phenomenal, there are hints of Judy and Major West getting together. Maureen and John have some romantic moments, but then of course in seasons 2 and 3, it changed.
Yeah.
It was different. Not It's still very entertaining, but very different. Still fantasy, but over the top, campy type fantasy more than serious fantasy like season one. When did that change start, and how did you feel about it?
Um, well, the change started really when Jonathan Dr. Harris, Dr. Smith, Jonathan Harris, Dr. Smith, I have to get that right, um, decided that he was probably going to be offed in some way because he was too bad and too evil in the beginning of the show. And so he started bringing this villain who you love to hate, you know, is Dr. Smith, and the writers began to enjoy that, and Jonathan began to bring sort of that Martita Hunt kind of thing to his role, and the writers, I think they got a little lazy. I hate to say it, but they found it easier to write for him, and Jonathan wrote a lot of his own dialogue, and then it became sort of the Will and Robot, and of course June and Guy were very almost devastated by this because it was supposed to be Space Family Robinson, and it was supposed to be only about the family and not about Dr. Smith. But, as the antagonist in the show, you have the protagonist and the antagonist, and it was just an easier way to present the show. And also there was Laugh-In, there was Batman, there was, that were opposite us. That was his style, yeah. And I was disappointed, of course, because it wasn't what I had planned for or hoped for.
I'd like to ask you about the cast members. I was watching one of the episodes of Lost in Space, and with the commentary of all you guys watching and laughing about the episode, and there's a scene where Guy Williams is standing there, and you just hear Mark kind of say to himself, "He was a star." What did you think of Guy Williams? I love him.
Oh, Guy was elegant. He was he was sophisticated. He was learned. He would play classical music in his room. He in his trailer. He was so. I when I found out that Guy Williams was going to play my father, I like lost it. I was nervous. I was in love, in a very, admiring way. And I just he taught me how to play killer Scrabble. Well, which was he and June. They won every game. I love games, and he it was so wonderful to be a part of that. We were family in that way, and I later on, here I am, the blonde, right, and my husband was an attorney, and we had a lot of attorney friends, and they'd come and visit our house in California from like Washington and D.C. and they'd say one they'd see the Scrabble, said, "You want to play?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, sure." You know, and I hustled them badly. They would be very surprised, and they go, "What?" You know, you know, yeah. So that it followed me through my life. That experience.
I heard June didn't mind too much because she got paid the same either way. And Bill Mummy, is it Mummy or Mummy? Mummy, I'm sorry. Bill had also said she was a pretty hip lady. She took him to the Whiskey A Go Go and stuff like that.
She was very hip. After this, like on Fridays, she'd be going out and she'd be dressed up in her, yeah, in crocheted flare pants and little tight top, and her hair would be down, and she was hip. But there are a couple of stories about June I love that. I, I I wanted to give my husband a birthday present, a surprise birthday present, riding on the blimp, the Goodyear blimp. And I thought, oh, who am I going? How can I get this? I'm going to call June because she knew everybody. And I called her, and she said, "Of course." She said, "What a hoot!" That's how she talked. And she said, "I only have one thing that I want you to agree to." And I said, "Of course." She said, If I'm invited, I will do this for you. And so I said, "Oh, duh, of course." And so much to his great surprise, yeah, I'm driving. He said, "Where are we going? Where are we going?" June's in the back, and he was a big brother, and so his big brother son was with us and our daughters, and he saw the Goodyear blimp. He said, "Oh no," and I said, "Thank you, Jim." And yeah, she was the smartest. Aside from my mother, she was the smartest woman I had ever met. She had an honorary journalistic award. I mean, she was extraordinary. She was so well read and so well informed about everything, and I greatly admired her. She's 100 now. She just turned 100.
Do you still keep in touch?
I occasionally will call, but I talked to Junie, her daughter, and last time I talked to June, she was saying, "Oh, Marta," she said, "I'm just sitting here. I'm reading and but looking out the window and watching the birds in the trees. And, yeah." But she's still very sharp. Yeah, yeah.
It was nice to watch both her on Lost in Space, then watching her daughter on Battlestar Galactica, Anne, who is great as well.
Looks just like
Right? Yes, exactly. So Bill and Angela, just amazing young actors, especially Bill. How in the world can a child act so well?
I think they just tune into, a certain part of themselves, and they have no filter, as a child. So they're told, well, this is who the person is. And oh, okay, because we all do that. I mean, we as children, we pretend,
Right.
and that's
Will Robinson and Penny and Will were they were more advanced than they were highly intelligent the characters they played were highly intelligent people, especially Will. And not that Penny wasn't intelligent as well, but of course Will got more of the screen time, and he solved a lot of the problems and fixed a lot of the things that Dr. Smith screwed up. So that takes a certain maturity that it's more than just pretending. It freaks me out, to be honest with you. When I watched Lost in Space in its entirety every summer. It's a tradition because it aired on WKBD Channel 50 in Detroit as a summer show in the afternoon. So I always look forward to the summer. School's out, Lost in Space is on. So when the DVDs and Blu-rays came out, I resumed my tradition of watching Lost in Space every summer, and I just love it. And I'm just always astonished at Billy's acting.
Well, Billy was smart. He's very, very smart, and he.
All on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, one of my comments.
Oh, really? Oh, well, yeah. He's just a very smart man, smart child, smart man, and musician, wonderful guitar player, a good songwriter. Yeah, he's just sort of well rounded, but he's afraid of flying. Ironically, you are. I'm not.
Pretty much, yeah. But
I-
I will fly.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then lastly, Jonathan Harris. Now, with I was as we're talking, you spoke a foreign language, and Jonathan Harris, I guess, had a heavy Brooklyn accent growing up, which is part of why he became such a master enunciator. Just tell us a little bit about what he was like. I just adore him.
Jonathan was not at all like the character he played. He was not at all like Dr. Smith. He was funny. Oh, he played. He told blue jokes. He'd say, "Are there any children in the room?" And I mean, there were jokes that he told that were laugh out loud, roll on the floor kind of jokes, and he he was a very kind person. And he would talk about his childhood and about being so poor that his parents had to bring in boarders who slept in his bed, and he slept on the dining room table, kind of thing. And that he developed this. Well, he had been a pharmacist. He went to a pharmacy and married Gertrude. Gertrude, I loved Gertrude, loved Gertrude. We became friends after Jonathan passed, and I would take her out to lunch, and but she also had spoke like very, very eloquently, and she had bright red hair, and she was one of the first. She was the first woman executive at Max Factor. Yeah, but Jonathan, going back to Jonathan, he he decided that he was going to, speak without an accent, and he did work with Martita Hunt and the Mad Woman of Chaillot, I think, on Broadway, and he worked with Michael Rennie. And anyway, he had to get rid of his accent, and he did, and but he made it even greater, this elocution, as Dr. Smith. And calling the robot names. Oh yeah. Oh, and the what are the alliterations that he used? He used the story that I heard was that school teachers would, the next day after Lost in Space, have taken down the alliterations that Jonathan brought to, and Jonathan wrote them, and would say, okay, what does female pulchritude mean? And they'd all have to, we don't know. They'd have to look it up, and so he was a teacher in many ways.
Oh, well, where else would you learn the word bellicose and bumpkin at the same time?
Exactly. Yes, and yeah. So he was a teach. He not only taught me, but he taught the children that were watching the show.
And speaking of teachers, didn't Mark become a teacher after he was an actor? Is that
God bless Mark. He became a teacher for special needs, and he w- he it was his goal in life. I mean, he said acting is good, but this is great. And Mark, I have to tell you, was one of the funniest people you have ever met. He, I mean, he loved these conventions, and he would get up if we weren't doing much business. And he'd call people in and he'd start talking to them and talking to them. And I would watch him with wonder, because he would make them finally end up feeling like, oh, I know this person and I'm going to buy a picture. And so he would do that. I mean, they would, after, because he would talk and talk and talk and talk and make jokes, and oh God, I miss him so. I miss him. I miss yeah, I miss him so. And he was sort of a crush, handsome, and we would we had, you could see there was a chemistry between us.
like Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland had that chemistry?
Yes.
They never
Yes,
together.
exactly.
Both had crushes on each other.
Exactly. And we enjoyed working together. And Jonathan, as I told you earlier, taught me how to treat people on set. And I mean, I knew it, but he just showed me that was the way to be kind to each other, good to each other, watch out for each other, and love each other.
Amazing, amazing. Dr. Zachary Smith.
Zachary Smith.
Okay. Well, lastly, Marta, what are you up to these days? How do you keep yourself busy?
Well, I lost my home in the Palisades fire, and my daughters lost theirs, and so I have been in 5 different places since then. I finally settled. I went to Florida for a while to visit with friends. They were so lovely and asked me to said, "Would you, if you need a room, here it is." I stayed in several other places and finally settled in Venice,
Okay.
in a tiny apartment.
Yeah.
And I had gone with my dog, who's deaf and blind and old, and she love her. It's a little tiny thing, got used to bumping into this wall and that wall, but gently now. She gently bumps it, and but I finally settled in Venice, and starting all over again in many ways. But I'm doing a film next month.
Awesome.
With a wonderful actor, Vernon Wells. He was my neighbor, and he lost his house as well. And but starting over, putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And it's been tough. It's been very,
Can't imagine.
it's it's I reach for something and it's not there, but there are things that I have this heart on that was put on by Tanta Marta, from whom I took my name.
Yes.
She arranged for me to come to the United States,
Right.
and she put this around my neck when I was at the airport, and said, "Remember her." And I thought I had lost it, but I found it in the corner of this little purse that I had. It was like a miracle.
It is.
And yeah, and it's my good luck charm. But so I'm I'm doing, as I said, a film, and it's a slasher film.
Okay.
And it's produced and directed and written by a man named Brian Martin, who worked with Robert Redford for 30 years. And I'd worked in 2 films with him prior to this, and it's so much fun. I mean, I've never done a film like this, and I use language that my parents would go, "Oh, no, 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 don't say that." But it's fun. I'm tough. I'm old. But I have a sense of humor.
Oh,
Yeah,
I can't.
yeah, it's
So
fun.
where can we keep up on the progress and when it's going to be able to be seen?
Well, it's called I'm Alive, and it'll probably take. Well, I'm working on it for a month next in Lake Tahoe next month, and then I'm doing other conventions around it, and then I'm going to be in Carlisle in the end of October, and then Tennessee and Akron, and then anyway, I'm continuing doing these because you know why? Because yesterday a man came. His name was Kevin, which was my husband's name, and he loved the show. And he came with his wife, and then his family appeared, his sons and daughter, and all his grandchildren, to surprise him for his birthday, and that is why I do these, because I said I mean there were maybe 10 of them, and all these babies, and I mean it was so wonderful that to see the family, and that's what Lost in Space was about, the family. And there they were, and so I photobombed them in one of their family photos, and but I said, "This is another family, that I'm a part of now." And there are some people who canceled. I don't know why, but I would never do that, because there that was the experience that makes living, makes being a part of this world,
Yes.
and it unites us, worthwhile.
Yes, and I've always felt that actors who come to these conventions, some people say, "Well, they're resorting to that." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Screen actors don't get to see their audience or hear or interact with their audience. When you come here, you get to meet your audience, and they're so happy to see you. It's like, I don't know why Meryl Streep doesn't do these things, or why everybody doesn't do them."
I know, and yes, and I get people, they wait in line, and I'm talking because I talk to everyone, because of that, and it's an honor. It's my honor to be with people, and
Oh, we're so glad to see you. Nick with Comic Experience Sci-Fi and Marta Kristen.